Hey, welcome back to Common Sense OT Security. Today we are doing kind of a sequel to a recent episode where I talked about IEC 62443, and you will be able to find that easily on our YouTube channel. So there you'll find all the episodes of the Common Sense OT Security webcast, and here you have that OT network segregation episode where I compare the different approaches of Purdue versus IEC 62443. And today I'll focus on target security levels, which is very closely associated with the network segregation and the zoning, because what IEC 62443 does is by using these target security levels, of which there are a couple. And I recently came across, and why am I doing this? I recently came across a very interesting post on LinkedIn by River Claude. I reposted it to my followers, where River Claude from River Risk Partners posits that IEC 62443 has a fundamental flaw baked into its foundation. And then he goes on and explains what he means by that, because security levels they are based on who is attacking you. And he's absolutely right. So if you take a closer look at how those target security levels are defined, this is what you're going to find. So unfortunately, I cannot use the original document set because otherwise they could sue me, because you have to license it individually, which I find pretty odd these days. So I just refer you to Wikipedia. So this is the 62443 Wikipedia page, and here they break down those various security levels from 0 to 4. The best one, in my opinion, is security level 0, no special requirement or protection requirement. I mean, we don't care if that shit goes down. Let the script kill or whomever do what they want. Doesn't matter. We don't care. And then it goes always higher, and the highest protection level is 4, which means protection against intentional misuse using sophisticated means with extensive resources, automation-specific knowledge, and high motivation. And just think about it for a second. Why would that be a problem? I would imagine that at face value, most people would say, oh, sounds reasonable, because we are considering the capabilities and motivations of imagined attackers, or maybe not even just imagined, because we're doing our threat intelligence, and we think we really should put more protection to those systems where we have reason to assume that the Iranians are after that particular network or plant component or whatever. So it's basically a threat-based definition or assessment of what the protection should look like. And but now I get back to my question: does that make sense? Probably you would say at face value, it seems to make sense. Yes. And I have to tell you, I'm more in the camp of our man, River Codle, I hope I pronounced his name correctly, who argues, no, that does not make sense. And I just urge you to read that whole article, which is also you will find the link in the description below, so it's easy to find. So he makes an astute point, as I also point out here. And let me explain why I think he is right on the money. So first of all, I think today you would say, wait a second, what about cost of consequence? Because, and this is in a way surprising, in my opinion, because the general approach of 62443 is risk-based. And as everybody knows, there are a couple of components that define risk. Threat is one of those components, and another is cost of consequence. Now, the fact is that we are able to identify or assess cost of consequence better than the threat part. And I'm not saying very well, because I'll get back to that later. It's actually, so when you think about criticality, it's actually not that simple to identify, but we can do it better than figuring out who would want to attack us. So that is quite strange that while the overall framework is risk-based, here when it comes to those security levels, they focus pretty much solely on threats. And apparently in an attempt to understand the capabilities and the motivation of those threats. And I think that that's really a bit odd. So let's try to break this down. First, when you consider motivation, do you have mind-reading capabilities? Could you really assess the motivation very well? So let's go back to Wikipedia here. Like high motivation for level 4, and then moderate motivation. Moderate motivation puts you at level 3, and low motivation at level 2. Meaning, they would probably do some opportunistic stuff, but they don't go all in. And so I think that's in any reliable manner. Just think about your daily life. Think about assessing the motivation of your, I don't know, coworkers, your boss, whomever. It's not so simple. Let me tell you, my friends, as a trained psychologist with a degree in psychology. So that is easier said than done. And the other thing that puzzles me, so when you think about, okay, I get the point. They want to understand the capabilities of those attackers, because this is also where you think about nation state or just script kiddies, etc. And so this is where the resources come in. Okay, extensive resources, moderate resources, fewer resources, and that is also something where I don't see the practical value, because just keep in mind, how many times have you heard about those attack frameworks that are now available for everybody, like Pipe Dream, that allegedly super sophisticated attack framework where you can kind of like automate Modbus attacks? Wow, I mean, we did that 30 years ago almost. But anyhow, so with the availability of these frameworks and although all that knowledge and code samples that are available on the public internet, does the resources, the extensive resources, really play such an important role? Also keep in mind that a lot of people today in 2025 are under the impression that you must not use active asset discovery because it would be dangerous and unsafe. So like you're executing a benign discovery run, as you probably know, we don't even call it a scan. So what we are doing in our T-base with active discovery, that's not your scan that Nmap would do. But let's just go all in and say, well, Nmap, you're doing an aggressive Nmap scan, and that can completely shut down the operation. Well, if that would be the case, why would you even then make that distinction about few resources and extensive resources? Because I would be prompted to think, well, then I just need to place to bring my Nmap on target, and I can blow up the whole plant just like that. So lots of questions. Also, let me give you a couple of other examples. Where did we see extensive resources being used for cyber-physical attacks in the past? Do we have something on the record for that? We have one example for that, and that is Stuxnet. And why extensive resources? Well, that's very simple. Because it is clear, absolutely clear as day from the forensics, that the attackers must have had a replica of the Natanz fuel enrichment, at least of one cascade. And it even gets better. That replica must have been fully functional. So it must have been filled with actual uranium hexafluoride. That is what I would call extensive resources, and then also the capability to do a physical break-in at some Taiwanese company in order to steal a digital certificate. That is extensive resources, but we have seen that only once in history. So just flashback, when we had been talking about the Triconix attack, I was baffled when the guys, the good people of Schneider Electric told us at the S4 stage, or on the S4 stage, well, those attackers had unlimited resources. No, they did not. So the attackers in the Triconix attack, they didn't even have a test system. This is why they were caught, because they had to do their testing on target. So they certainly did not have unlimited or even extensive resources. And then finally, just to make the whole list complete, I could also point to Iran. You know, how many times had you been scared about those Iranian hackers? They certainly have high motivation to attack the US. They have high motivation to attack Israel. But when it comes to hacking, what have we seen? Just keep in mind, a couple of years ago, when the first Trump administration bombed their beloved terrorist, the General Soleimani, what did those hackers accomplish? I can tell you: website defacement of a government website, of a U.S. government website. That was it. Where you could make the point, well, they were certainly motivated as hell, but that was the only thing they could pull off. So just to give you some food for thought on determining, well, why is that not really a good idea, or an idea that would yield anything, or maybe to the most important point. So I'm not doing this just to ridicule IEC 62443. That's not my point. Why should I? Because it's presently the best guidance, or the most complete guidance that we have. But as some point out here, even in this thread, you should never, in any case, you should not follow whatever standard you're focusing on to the letter. You're never bound to a standard. This is what our man Martin O points out. Yes, absolutely. And you may remember me saying that earlier. I suggest that you should be an eclectic. That means that you pick from the standard, or from the various standards that you use, whatever makes sense for you. And in this case, I would say, well, it doesn't make sense. So the way that the target security levels are presently defined in 62443 doesn't make sense. But in case you wonder, well, in OT base, we have actually, so you can apply those target security levels. There is a field for that, but we don't suggest that you actually use it in the original way that it is defined in the standard. So you could use it, for example, to express a categorization based on cost of consequence, or risk, or whatever you want to call that, right? So I think you should stay away from this threat-based categorization. And luckily, our good friend Eric Kosman also chimes in here, and elaborates on this. In a nutshell, confirming, yeah, that's probably not really a good idea. And in case you don't know Eric, he is one of the founding fathers of this whole effort, which started with ISA 99. So you can take his word. So he knows his stuff. And he makes a very good argument, I think, that even if we would concede that that needs to be revised or modernized, whatever you want to call it, that is going to take a long time, because with all those international standards, until you have all the voting collected, etc., that will take a couple of years, my friends. So he is telling us that these definitions will likely be changed, but they also need then to introduce a change process, etc. And anyone with interest in the subject is always welcome to join the ISA 99 committee. Yeah, I would be interested, but I don't have the time to spare. So summing up, my advice is to just don't take any standard too literally. Don't try to implement it according to the letter, but grab from any standard what makes sense to you in your specific situation. Okay, so in closing, one thing I would like to point out, if you're interested in more of Eric's take on 62443 and related subjects, he has recently published a paper for us, and you will be able to download it from our website, otbase.com. If you go to resources there, you will find his paper right on top here. And you would also find an additional paper on 62443, telling you a little bit more about how an OT asset inventory is mandatory for a 62443 implementation. So we don't have any questions, no comments, so I'll just leave it at that. See you again next week. Bye-bye.